We argue here at the David Tulis Show for the end of the idol of politics. the thinking in which you say, if we just get the right person in office, we will be saved from the bad laws that are on the books. This person will write better laws and maybe tinker with the ones that are there. Of course, that person cannot ever be expected to eliminate statute and go back and just erase line after line of code. That code is there forever. Code written in the 1940s still controls large parts of the economy. Code from the 50s, code from the 60s in the USC, code from the 70s and 80s. It's there and it's dragging us down. We are gasping for breath, and we are humiliated as a people. We're out of ideas. We've lost steam, and the American dream in many ways is over. There is, of course, the analysis about how long empires last. By one count, it is 250 years, and we are about 6 or 7 years from the end of that counting. We're talking now with Dave Crockett, who ran for city council, ran for the mayor's office most recently, and was a 3-term member of the Chattanooga City Council in 1990 to 2001. He's worked in industry in the computing field, and is an environmentalist and a kind of libertarian. It's hard. He doesn't fit categories very well. And in the campaign, I wrote about him extensively, trying to figure out what to say about him. He was clearly the man of ideas, and of late he has been, if I'm to believe his report, he's been a kind of minister without portfolio, working in the background in the direction of a high-speed rail system between North Atlanta, and Chattanooga. And what I want to ask Dave now about is this: is there something in the way city government, the corporation of Chattanooga, and the county corporation, is there some way in which these structures, these legal entities, are built and exist that prevents Chattanooga from coalescing, from cohering, from obtaining perhaps greatness? Dave Crockett, what is the problem right now in the tax structure in Tennessee that touches on Chattanooga and Hamilton County?
Well, let me first relate a conversation that I was part of on a panel for a statewide group, and with the very conservative head of the Senate Budget, chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, as they talked about their financial future. This is somebody who had witnessed one of the largest investments by an outside business, in this case, a large German automobile manufacturer of epic proportions, and more businesses that streamed behind that, and had launched this under a Republican governor, a Republican legislature, and had launched an economic renaissance in a state. That was how they referred to it. And was now making the bold statement that on the path that they were on, the state could well become bankrupt. Odd statement for somebody with that glowing a report on the economy. And the reason he was doing that was 2 reasons. One, that their state had grown to be the poster child for large incentives for business. They would give you literally their firstborn if you would locate a plant there. And 2, they had grown their infrastructure without regard to what it would cost. They were growing willy-nilly and increasing their fixed and variable costs to a point where no growth pattern could sustain it. You couldn't run fast enough. You couldn't recruit enough automobile companies. You could not do anything that would save them from that model that they were on. As a bold, I turned and watched and looked at this man who was as conservative as you could be in a conservative government in a very conservative state. That state was South Carolina. That conversation was about 15 years ago. And the state had taken a long-term view, something that I'm not sure we've done in the state of Tennessee. And they had done a deep dive and an analysis on their current situation. One that, for all intents and purposes, would be the rosiest in the state's history because of landing BMW, Michelin Tire Company, and the other things and everybody was dancing around, including the governor, but the governor realized that too. The governor realized that too. He went on to become now working in mission work, conservative, very smart Republican with ties to Chattanooga, in that he went to Macaulay School. Now, if you take that and now apply it to Chattanooga and to the state of Tennessee, the only difference in that model and that conversation is that we've done the exact same thing, but we haven't realized it yet. We haven't taken that deep dive into the finances of the state and of the counties and the cities. And we have a model that was created in the 1800s and early 1900s. And it has such things as the county seat will be a day's horseback ride. And horseback ride is frequently in that model. We have a tax structure that was created during that time. And it's maintained today.
And what is the key fact about the tax structure? What are the facts? What are the two main facts about that structure?
Well, the main factor is that we divided counties and very evenly, and we have 90 counties in the state of Tennessee. And the taxation system was that everybody in that county would pay county taxes, and that you would have ways for smaller governments of incorporated or cities to be present, and they would pay county taxes as well as.
You mean the counties would pay, the cities would pay those taxes, or the people in the cities would pay those taxes in addition to city taxes?
The people in those cities would pay those taxes.
Double taxation.
Or as well as the others. And that worked out pretty good because most of the population was centered in cities. And, the rural areas were rural areas. But after World War II, with the beginning of Sears moving to the suburbs and subdivisions created, the first one, big one, was Levittown, and then that became the norm of rapidly moving from Sears being downtown when I was a boy. And you would go downtown and stick your feet under that magic machine that would show you the bones. I loved that. It turned out not to be healthy, but and the Sears store was everything. It was the end all be all. But now Sears is gone effectively, and the malls have moved to the suburbs and move out in rapid jumps as fast as they can. And subdivisions are created at distances from cities that no one could have projected because we are building more and more roads to get people there rapidly.
And you mean out of the city?
Out of the
city.
And
then back to the city.
And spread out as rapidly as possible. And in South Carolina, they realized that model could not be sustained. That they not only couldn't build new roads at some point in time, they could not even remotely do maintenance on the roads that they had. They could not support the fixed and variable costs that come with that. This is not hard to do. That fire service, class 3 fire service, for insurance purposes, which is what you have in the city of Chattanooga, you have to have a fire hall within 1.5 miles of you. And so if you spread it out, then that's just that many more fire halls.
And that's an income that's a cost for the county. Employment, capital investment bonds that pay for that facility.
That's a cost to the county and the city, and the cities and the county now, but that would be okay. That model would work great, except the current model we have says that people who live outside the municipalities don't have to pay for those services. They get them, but they don't have to pay for them. If you needed another fire hall, volunteer fire hall in Chattanooga, or you needed to hire another 10 police deputies, or to hire 10 more people to public works and spend X more on roads and road maintenance, that 80% of that would be paid for by people who live in cities. 70% of the people that in this county live in incorporated areas. They pay 80% of the county taxes. So if you live outside, which many of our state legislators do, in unincorporated areas, then they are willing to fight for the rights of the people who live in the unincorporated not to pay for the services they receive. And they maintain that structure under the excuse that we can't do anything about it. It's always been this way. And it has for a century. And we can't change it. This is the way we've always done it. When I ran for office, I heard that phrase a lot. We can't change that. This is the way we've always done it. I didn't believe that. I believed that we could change the structure of the city school systems, and we did. Everybody said we couldn't. We did. I believe that we hadn't enacted a local sales tax in 22 years. People said we can't do it. It can't be done. But we put together proposals and a plan that would let the people of Chattanooga decide their own destiny. And we gave them an upside and a downside that said, if you vote for this, it will benefit you, and it will immediately benefit you by a 50-cent property tax decrease in both of those cases. If you don't, then it's going to lead to a 50-cent property tax increase. The people voted. They voted to do what was in their best interest, as people will do when you give them a choice. Those two actions allowed us to cut property taxes 3 times, 50 cents each time. And in addition to that, to fund $250 million of economic development projects for the city of Chattanooga that would create more revenue to the cities. But that wasn't factored into it. We created the infrastructure that let us do Volkswagen, that doubled our tourism and convention business.
All right, my listener Dave Crockett is losing the thread here.
Okay.
Let's just back up. You're saying the city resident pays the city municipal taxes, the city sales tax, and the city property tax. He also pays the county property tax and, of course, the county sales tax on transactions anywhere in the county, in the city, or in the county.
And people that live in the, I know how hard this job is of Mayor Coppinger. And he is being pressed hard to support the schools. And it is a tough job to raise taxes. I mean, that is hard. It's not as hard as changing the model that would keep you from having to do it. It's not as hard as the city council standing up and say, no mas, we're not doing this anymore. But it's hard. Everybody in the city pays a county tax, and they pay for education and all the other services. But people in the county do not pay for their services of police, fire, parks, roads, public works. Those services are essentially, they pay 20% of the cost of those. Now, what that means is it's not fair, number one, to 70% of the people in the county, East Ridge, Signal Mountain, Lookout Mountain, Chattanooga, any incorporated area. It's not fair. But the other thing that's more important and leads to the point that the chairman of the South Carolina Senate Finance Committee was making, it is an incentive for people to move outside the incorporated areas and grow the population and grow very rapidly the infrastructure and the services outside the incorporated areas.
All right, so the listener's going to lose the thread. Your idea is that for a major reform in taxes that would affect Hamilton County and Chattanooga would be what? How would you stop that outflow and that spreading out of infrastructure and its costs?
Well, if you're a conservative, and a lot of people beat their breast and talk about how conservative they are, but that's, as I've said before, David, a lot of thunder and lightning and no rain. I don't know any of those people that have ever reduced taxes. I've cut them 3 times. I know how that you cannot do the very same things you've always done and expect that you can have a different outcome and reduce your cost and avoid and cut taxes. You cannot do it. And second, people that will say they're libertarian, I believe in people paying for what they do. Most of the time, that's a good theory, but when you get right down to it, those people, anybody who's getting over on the government or getting over on their neighbors or getting a break or a loophole will protect that like a grizzly defending cubs if they're getting it. I don't care what they call themselves, conservatives, Republicans, libertarians.
Go on. What's your point, Dave?
The point is that you have to change the model where people pay for what they get, period.
And how would that be done?
It could be done in 2 ways, David. One is that the legislature could pass enabling legislation to allow cities above 100,000 or some arbitrary number or that they pick, like the state of Virginia, to vote to become a county unto themselves, meaning independent. For me, I would prefer that model. And the city of Chattanooga would become Chattanooga County. And we would be responsible for every single thing in our boundary.
Would Chattanooga maintain its corporate status as a city? Or would it drop? Would it rescind that or void that?
No, we would be a county.
We would not be a city.
We would not be a city. We'd be a county, just like Hamilton County is a county. Now, we might share things with Hamilton County, like if it was more advantageous to both of us to keep a common court system.
Does the listener understand? And what you're saying is that if Chattanooga became its own county because of enabling legislation from the General Assembly, that person in Chattanooga would not be paying Hamilton County taxes anymore. Is that the point? Is that the main idea, Dave?
That'd be the main idea.
Because that sounds pretty exciting.
We pay for what we get. You don't pay county taxes. Now, that would mean that we'd either have to establish things on our own. We would be 100% responsible for our schools, but we would get 100% of the money from the state and from our local funds to support that. We would control 100% of the budget. When we had a separate school board, we only controlled 5% of the budget.
You mean we Chattanooga?
You can't control anything when you don't control. Signal Mountain will have the essentially the only thing that will happen there is there'll be an all-white school system, just about, because they won't participate in the zoning and the bus transfer, et cetera. But in terms of finance, the county will still control 95 or 98% of the finances of that school system. And I want 100% of control, and I want 100% of the funds so that you can do the things that will make your schools successful, including those schools that are failing.
And so you're saying, Dave Crockett, is if you're a Nooga centrist, you're saying this is a legal reform that takes place in the realm of law.
Right.
That if it happens, that Chattanooga and Chattanoogans like my listener can really be the local economy man, right? You have local government, locally controlled, and you've reduced the sphere of operation by half.
I can understand that no county elected official wants to do this because it is hard. I can understand that the state legislature is not wanting to do it because it's hard, and doing things like preventing cities from doing annexation is not hard. That's like riding in the Christmas parade, throwing candy to the crowd. I mean, that is not a tough one. If you can, that is an easy one. But they've relied on the fact that this has always been this way. The second way to do it would be easier. In some ways, it's harder, and that is to have the county suspend tax increases for the cities, the incorporated areas, until they have leveled out, and the county residents are now paying their full ride, the full cost of their police, fire, parks, and public works.
That seems very difficult, Dave, because I don't think anybody would understand a proposal for that to be done.
Well, you would essentially just say, from this point forward, the county is going to pay the county residents in the unincorporated. If you're sitting in Bradley County owning some property in Hamilton County and in the unincorporated areas, you're now going to pay for the roads to it. You're now going to pay for the police to it. The citizens of Chattanooga, who are regarded in large part.
Wouldn't that be a jurisdictional problem, Dave, saying that this resident in Bradley County is going to pay a tax other than the property tax for that piece of land?
Well,
in Hamilton.
Because this would happen statewide, David. And the people in Bradley County who are in the unincorporated areas would pay for tax. And if they were in Hamilton County, they pay for tax. And it has a greater probability of passing, because if you take all of the incorporated areas in the state and you tell them that it is in their interest and that people who are getting a free ride and causing taxes to go up are going to have to start paying for them, then that has a high likelihood of being passed. Right now, we've got 7 state legislators who represent 30% of the people. They don't represent the incorporated areas.
Well, it sounds like you're proposing something with the vigor of the same kind that David Copeland did. He was in Republican in the 30th district up until 1992. He proposed income tax reform with an income tax, a tax on wages, and an end of sales taxes. A very big idea that may have worked theoretically, but he just couldn't gain ground with it. It's a very difficult argument to make. It's maybe unpalatable.
I didn't support it then. I don't support it now. We're taxing the thing that, why would you want to do an income tax? And that's what you want to do. We're supporting change in the property tax. The property tax, the thing that is closest to all of us and what people have just suffered 2 increases on.
This is David Tulis. We've been talking with Dave Crockett, the number 1 Nooga centrist in Chattanooga. He and I are fighting for that position, but he's got it right now because he has a fabulous Texas hat on here in the studio. David Tulis, Dave Crockett, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
We are looking at tax reform in the future. David Tulis, thanks for joining us. Brought to you by Nooganomics.com.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader.